So a big part about team building in the NBA is having some really good contracts on your cap sheet. Guys like Aaron Wiggins, Peyton Pritchard, and even Jalen Brunson are under amazing contracts, which allows their teams to build out their roster at a much more efficient level. But then there's the opposite side of that. There are the bad contracts in the NBA that could just bring your team's cap flexibility crashing down. So for today's video, I wanted to talk about what in my opinion is the 15 worst contracts currently in the NBA. We're gonna have some bigger contracts, we're gonna have some smaller contracts. Like always, I'd love to know what you agree or disagree with, and you can let me know down below. And without further ado, let's get into this. So we're gonna start off with one that really didn't need to happen, but the team extended their former MVP winner before the start of the 2025 season when he already had some knee issues and he was coming off a Olympics appearance for Team USA, and that's Joel Embiid of the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, Embiid originally had $51 million on the books this year and $55 million on the books next year, and then he signed a 3-year deal worth over $190 million before the start of this year's regular season, which is going to put him at just under $60 million for the 2027 season, $62 million the year after that, and then has a $67 million player option for the 2029 season when Joel Embiid is going to be almost 35 years old. And there's a couple of reasons why this could be looked at as a negative contract, but the main reason is just because of Joel Embiid's lack of availability for the Philadelphia 76ers. Throughout his whole career, he's had injury concerns, but in 2022 and in 2023, he rattled off back-to-back years playing over 60 games, and that included 2 scoring titles and an MVP feat back in 2023. But the last 2 years, Embiid, he was dominant in the 39 games he played last year for the 76ers. He did all he could against the Knicks in round number 1, but was basically playing with one knee and could only see out of one eye. And then I kind of disagree that he played with Team USA in the Olympics. I feel like that could have been an offseason where he could have gotten healthy and gotten right. Kawhi Leonard took the Olympics off, and he even had to miss the start of the season. But then Embiid has only played 19 games this year. He's been in and out of the lineup, and he is officially out for the rest of this season with another knee injury and is going to get another knee surgery. And you just never know. These centers do not age very well at 7 feet tall. Embiid, with his injury history, this could be a very bad contract going forward, which can really limit Philadelphia's flexibility. And I'm sorry, Sixers fans, this will not be the last contract that we talk about for your team. Now, next up, we're going to talk about somebody that only has 1 year left on his deal after this year, but he's basically unplayable in the year 2025, and that is Terry Rozier of the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat have been a well-ran organization for the last decade plus, and the Charlotte Hornets have been basically the opposite, and the Hornets fleeced the Miami Heat in this trade back at the 2024 trade deadline. Getting a first-round pick for Terry Rozier, selling at his highest value, was a fantastic move for the Charlotte Hornets, and like I said, he's basically unplayable. Rozier in the year 2025 is averaging 12 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists. He's shooting sub 40% from the field and sub 30% from 3. And if you watch his performance against the Cleveland Cavaliers the other night, it may have been the worst individual performance from any NBA player this year alone. He's a negative offensive player, he's a negative defensive player, and if he's just making that much money and unplayable, he's got to make this video. A team that is so much fun to watch right now is the Portland Trail Blazers with their young core on both ends of the floor. But I don't really enjoy watching this player for this team, and that is Jeremy Grant, who is still a fine player in this league, but he's signed a 5-year, $160 million contract with the Portland Trail Blazers back in the 2023 offseason. And the funny thing is, they didn't have to give him this deal. They knew that Damian Lillard could have been traded that offseason, and they still gave Jeremy Grant $160 million, who makes up 20% of the team's cap space and is going to be making $36 million in 2028 on a player option at 33 years old, while you're getting better production out of Tumani Kamara, Donovan Clingan, Danny Avdija, and Shaedon Sharpe, who are making a fraction of what Jeremy Grant is making. It just makes the contract look that much worse. And the fact that after this year, there's still 3 more years that Portland has to pay Grant makes it a very bad deal. Next up, we're going to talk about somebody who unfortunately suffered a major season-ending injury this year, and that is Dejounte Murray of the New Orleans Pelicans. Yeah, Murray signed an extension with the Atlanta Hawks a few years ago, and he's making $29 million this year, which is 20% of the team's total cap space, and that goes up throughout the next 2 years. And Dejounte Murray was terrible in the 31 games that he has played for the Pelicans this year, shooting under 40% from the field and 30% from 3. It makes it look even worse that the Pelicans gave up 2 future first-round picks and an all-defensive first-team player this year in Dyson Daniels to acquire Dejounte Murray. Now, they didn't know that he was going to suffer a season-ending injury, but you never know how he's going to recover. This is a very major injury to come back from. And San Antonio didn't want Dejounte Murray, and they fleeced the Atlanta Hawks talks for him. Dejounte didn't win in Atlanta, and it looks like Atlanta fleeced New Orleans for Dejounte Murray. I just don't know if they can win with Dejounte Murray making all this money in the long term, and I'm afraid how this contract is going to age for the Pelicans, because he's getting paid like a top 15 point guard in this league, and that position is loaded, and I don't think he's a top 15 point guard, at least not anymore. I don't know what Chicago was thinking last offseason. I do not know who they were bidding against to give Patrick Williams $90 million over the course of 5 years, and Patrick Williams is putting up career lows across the board after he got paid. 37% from the field, by far a career low. 35% from three, also a career low. Is averaging 9 points per game, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists, and is one of the highest paid players on the Chicago Bulls team. $90 million guaranteed over the course of 5 years for somebody that has taken a step back defensively, in my opinion, and has not improved whatsoever offensively from his first few years in this league. It's definitely a contract that Chicago probably would like to have back. Another contract that a team would like to have back is probably the Denver Nuggets giving Zeke Naji $32 million over 4 years. They thought they were getting ahead of the market by giving him this extension after a productive year number 3 with the Denver Nuggets and ending the season on a strong note. The contract is fully kicked in this year, making $8 million this year, and then it goes down to $7.5 million in 4 years from now in 2028. Now, I wouldn't say this is one of the worst contracts in the league because it's just $8 million a year for a third string center. It's just for the Denver Nuggets situation, right up there against the first and second apron every single year with this core. They could really use to have this money back for somebody that at least would be a contributing piece in a playoff series. He's had his ups and he's had his downs. He's still just 24 years old, but I think this is also a contract Denver would like to have back. Now, I also wanted to pick one of the other massive Denver Nuggets contracts outside of Nikola Jokic for a nomination here, and I went back and forth between Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., and Aaron Gordon, and you can let me know, what do you think is the worst contract out of those 3 players? If there is a bad one there, I decided to go with Aaron Gordon here, who has been a productive offensive player this year for the Nuggets. He got a notable extension from Denver before the season ended, where he ended up making $22.5 million this year, $22.5 million next year, and then he signed a 3-year extension over $100 million. And what scares me, the contract kicks in the 2027 season, where he's going to be making $32 million, 19% of the team's cap space, and will be making $34.5 million in 2028 and $37 million in 2029, when Aaron Gordon is going to be around 33 years old. So this is just me being a little bit scared how Aaron Gordon is going to age, and I think something to know for these videos, these may be bad contracts looking at this in a macro view, but these teams have to pay these players. They're contributing pieces and important pieces to their title contending teams, and that's going to be very similar to about a couple deals we're going to get to later on. But I think if you're looking at this in just overall NBA contracts, the Aaron Gordon one isn't great, but Denver may have had no option. It's just they didn't really need to extend him before the season started. Yep, everybody knew that this contract was coming. We got to talk about Paul George. When he signed this massive 4-year, $211 million contract with the 76ers in the offseason, I was worried about years 3 and 4 of this deal. I did not expect Paul George to be this bad in year number 1 as a 34-year-old, but the signs of regression are there for Paul George, putting up career lows across the board basically since his sophomore year back in 2012. Last year, he was an all-star for the Clippers. He's struggling to get to the rim. He's regressing as a defender, and he's got a $49 million cap hit this year, 35% of the team's total cap, and the cap hit just goes up every single year. $51.5 million next year, $54 million in 2027, and has a player option of $56.5 million in 2028. When he's going to be 37 years old. 70% of their team's total cap space throughout the next few years is going to Joel Embiid and Paul George. That's really scary. So remember when I was talking about with the Denver Nuggets and I said they had to pay Aaron Gordon? These teams will pay these guys because they're trying to win a championship. It's going to be very similar to my next guy playing for the Boston Celtics, and that is Jrue Holiday. So Boston decided to pay everybody on their team. Tatum and Brown are getting the Supermaxes. Derek White got an extension, and so did Jrue Holiday, who signed a 4-year, $134 million deal with the Boston Celtics a couple off seasons ago. It finally kicked in this year at $30 million, 21% of the team's total cap space. And for the Boston Celtics, it's worth it if they can win another title either this year or next year on this deal, but it does go up every single year, and Jrue Holiday is putting up career lows since his rookie year in 2010 for the Philadelphia 76ers when he was 19. And if he's healthy, the Celtics are more than happy paying him that money because he could be a big reason why they can go back to back and win the 2025 NBA Finals. But when you look at the macro view of this contract, contract, it has to be one of the worst in the NBA. So we're going to stay on the topic of teams having to pay their guys, and the Knicks gave up a lot for OG Anunoby at the 2024 deadline, trading away Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett. OG was going to be a free agent last offseason. The Knicks could definitely not afford for him to leave for nothing. So they gave him a massive 5-year, $212 million contract where he's going to be making $36 million this year for the Knicks, 26% of the team's total cap space. That cap hit goes up every single year, $40 million next year, $42.5 million in 2027, $45.5 million in 2028, and $48 million in 2029 when OG is going to be 31 years old. And OG has been the best defender for the New York Knicks this season and is worth every penny right now. But if the Knicks can't get a title without this contract, this one may not age the best just because of OG's injury history in the past. He's only played above 70 games once in his career, and the Knicks are playing him at a career high 36 minutes a night right now. I'm kind of scared how his body is going to hold up as the main and pretty much only great defender right now on the team, and how that contract may look like when he's in his early 30s. Another one you probably expected, Bradley Beal of the Phoenix Suns, where Bradley Beal signed a 5-year, $250 million supermax with the Washington Wizards in the 2022 offseason, and we are in the final 3 years of this deal. $50 million this year for the Phoenix Suns in 2025, $53.5 million in 2026, and $57 million in 2027 when Bradley Beal is going to be 34 years old. But what makes this arguably the worst contract in the league, he has a no trade clause, so you can't get out of it unless Bradley Beal approves so. And the Suns tried to get out of it this year. They tried to get Jimmy Butler, and they probably could have gotten some type of deal done if Bradley Beal did not have that no trade clause. So I think when you're talking about some of the worst contracts that we're going to mention in this video, I think it's him or Paul George right now. Another contract that I think is kind of bad on the Phoenix Suns, and that is Grayson Allen, who signed a 4-year, $70 million extension because of his breakout 2024 season with the Suns. That contract finally kicked in this year, $15.5 million cap hit, which goes up every single year to $19 million in 2028 when he's going to be 32 years old. And Grayson was amazing for the Suns last year, was arguably the best three-point shooter in the 2024 season, and he's been fine as a three-point shooter this year after getting off to a bad start. I just feel like he's too inconsistent for somebody making this much money with his role on the offense, and maybe that's going to change when Kevin Durant gets traded in the offseason, but I just don't love Grayson Allen's defense whatsoever, and I don't think this contract is going to age well in the final 2 years of the deal. It's crazy how much money a player can make that could just change the public's view on how they're playing right now, because when Lauri Markkanen was making like $17 million a year, we thought this was one of the best contracts in the NBA, and we looked at him at a very high level. Now that Lauri Markkanen is making $40+ million a year for the next 5 years, we're holding him to a different standard, and this contract is pretty expensive. $42 million this year, $46 million next year, $46 million the year after that, $49 million in 2028, and then $59 million in 2029 when he's going to be around 32 years old. And I do think the Jazz should have sold high on Lauri Markkanen last offseason. It's going to be a little bit tougher to trade him this upcoming offseason because of that massive cap hit, and I wonder if they're not going to get as much in return now that he's making all this money. He's the 21st highest paid player in the NBA, and I don't think he's a top 25 guy right now. Second and last guy we're going to talk about is somebody similar to Terry Rozier. He does have an expiring contract next year, so it's not the worst deal in the world, but the fact that DeAndre Ayton is making $34 million right now, it's not a good deal to look at. But I just don't think DeAndre Ayton is ever going to make nearly as much money as he's making right now again in his career. And my last player is similar to Joel Embiid's reasoning for making this list. It's just because of the injury concerns. He's a top 20 contract in the NBA in terms of average annual value, and that is Kawhi Leonard of the LA Clippers. Now, when healthy, Kawhi Leonard could still be one of the best scoring wings and two-way wings in the NBA. The question is, will he be healthy for a playoff series? We haven't really seen him fully healthy in a playoff series since 2020 when they lost in round number 2 to the Denver Nuggets and they blew a 3-1 lead. Kawhi got injured in round number 2 against Utah back in 2021. He didn't play at all in 2022. In 2023, he got hurt in round number 1 against the Suns. In 2024, he was banged up in round number 1 against the Mavericks. And he's getting load managed once again this season. He is healthy right now, and I'm hoping he is healthy if the Clippers do make the playoffs this year. $50 million a year is a lot for a part-time player that hasn't been healthy in the playoffs in basically half a decade. So that is gonna be it for me. I hope you guys did enjoy. Let me know what you agree with or disagree with down below, and maybe give me your worst contract out of those 15 players that I mentioned. Hit that subscribe button if you guys are not already, and I'll catch you all on the next one. Peace.